Well, good morning, everybody. And I hope this is all working and you guys can see me. But I wanted to, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but good morning. I'm Jerry Wald, your stroke survivor. Um, and I wanted to come on and introduce my guest, who is absolutely a expert in aphasia and neuroplasticity. And but anyway, I want you guys to share this message and the show so you can inspire other people that are fairly going through a tough time or maybe not so tough. So I'm going to try my little intro here. I know you guys probably that are following me know I've had some computer issues the last few days. So let's go ahead and give this a shot and see if we can make it happen. So.
Taking a chance.
Goodness. Okay, that really didn't. Well, let's go ahead and bring on Mr. Dr. Tom Broussard, and we'll start learning a lot of things that we didn't know. So hang tight, and this is, oh my goodness. There you are.
Hi, Jerry.
How are you? What a
good.
disaster, this computer stuff.
Yeah, and computers are tough, that's for sure. But
yeah, I know.
You're doing well now. Your computer, everything's working now.
It looks like hopefully I'm not it's sketchy, causing issues. But how are you? It's so good to have you here.
I know it's been well, at least several months since I've seen you.
I know.
I think.
Yeah. It's been a couple months or so, but I have been watching all the your videos on YouTube, and like the one you just did, I saw about the little train that could, or that because your article just came out. Yes,
that's the one.
Yeah,
the article just came out. The little engine that could.
Yeah, can you explain that?
Sure. It's always a long story for all of us with stroke and aphasia. So I salute, by the way. So I'll make it a shorter, long story.
Sure.
Basically, my first stroke was almost 10 years ago. I had it in September, and we had to go for Thanksgiving in November of that year. So that was my first time leaving the house, other than walking, other than doctor's appointments. And I couldn't speak terribly well, and certainly couldn't read or write. So we go to Philadelphia every year. That's where we grew up. All of our family is there, about 25, 30 people. And it was my first time to go see everybody. And of course, it was their first time to see me. They didn't know about somebody in their family had a stroke and aphasia. So it was a very interesting, I'll call it interesting, meal. But it all went fine, and we left. Then now it's 10 years later, we're moving from Florida back to Maine. So I'm talking to you here from Brunswick, Maine. And we were unpacking, and I found this book, right? Yeah. I found this book, and I read it, and it's old. It's 1930, and it's a beautiful little book. And by now, I've been writing more, able to improve my language, and writing in many cases about metaphors that help people better understand how the brain really does work, from people that can understand what I'm talking about, not scientist lingo, using something that people can better understand, like motivation. So I got the book, and I thought, this is great. I'll write another article about this. And I opened the cover, and darn if I didn't see that somebody had written an inscription. And I read it, and here's what it says. Thanksgiving 2011, that is 2 months after my stroke. To Uncle Tom, keep on chugging. Love, Mike Coe.
Wow.
My older sister's oldest son. And he obviously gave it to me. Of course, back then, you know, I didn't know I got the book. I certainly couldn't read the book. I had no idea he had given it to me. 10 years later, obviously in a box somewhere, I find out that it's like a fish in a bottle. A letter in a bottle. He provided me with more motivational message with that little book. You know, I think I can, which we all knew when we were kids. He gave it to me, and I didn't have any idea until 10 years later when I read it, saw his inscription. I actually emailed him immediately. I said, do you remember this? Did you? He says, oh yeah. He said, you look like a deer in the headlines. He said, my eyes are like this. I wasn't talking to anybody. You know, I was just so scared. So I ended up writing that article, which just came out in honor of Aphasia Awareness Month.
Right. Yeah. And prior to your stroke, you were the dean. You were a dean at a college.
Yeah, at the graduate school, and I was only associate dean.
Okay.
But
yeah, I mean that's terrific. I mean, being a dean, and now you're a doctor. How this all worked out in aphasia and neuroplasticity, because I know you talk about that plasticity quite a bit.
Yeah. Plasticity continues to be what most people don't know anything about aphasia.
Right.
And plus, normal people like myself, I had no idea about this thing called plasticity. And that happens to be a skill we all have. Everybody has plasticity. And most of us don't realize that plasticity is a skill that can be used to create other skills. You know, this is the stem cell of learning, because if you come to understand how the brain really does work, since you have this capacity, if you provide additional fuel to the brain, and the fuel for the brain usually is the stimulus, the activities themselves, the cognitive activities themselves, reading, thinking, you will incur and induce more plasticity based on physical activity that you are doing. So most of us don't realize that you actually can improve your learning by improving or using more plasticity, using, again, it's sort of this wheel that goes around. You get more of this by doing more of this, that brings you more of this, that brings you more of that. So it really is an amazing machine of the brain, and it happens to have this particular capacity that we all have called plasticity, and nobody knows anything about it other than people with stroke and aphasia for the most part, and some doctors. But you and I aren't having that conversation with some surgeon who is wonderful with operating on our brain, but he is not going to talk to us about how the brain, from a behavioral perspective, how we really can improve our language and our body from a stroke by using, like you do, Jerry, by using the activities themselves. They are the fuel.
Right. Yeah. It is quite amazing because 10 years out for me, 10 years or 11 years for you, we're still learning. We're still, we're not plateaued. So we keep learning and conquering more things, don't we? I mean, we just doesn't stop.
That is true. That is true. We've all heard this word plateau.
Yes.
But, and I think most people have finally, giving up on that. Although, again, lots of doctors who really don't know, they'd have to join our group, meaning your group, right? They'd have to join us, learn from us for a long time. And then doctors go, oh, that's what these guys are doing. I thought it was
Right.
just a machine that's broken. You fix it or you don't fix it, and it will always remain broken, not realizing that it's a highly adaptive capacity to, quote, get better forever, because you can't not learn. So every single day when you learn something new, that means plasticity is still working. And again, we need the doctors to come to understand how the brain really does work forever. They can never say that you cannot learn, meaning with your hands, your legs, your brain. Cannot say that you can't do this. Although many, unfortunately, some will still say, oh, 6 months and then it's over.
Yeah, and I've heard that. I mean, I've heard that from me. I've heard it a year after going to therapy. This is pretty much you plateaued, so you have to get used to this type of life.
Right.
When I heard that, I was like, oh, really? This is it?
Right. Yeah,
Wow.
it really is amazing. And my brother had a stroke 3 years ago now. If you'll probably remember, because we've talked over the years.
Yes. Yeah.
And he doesn't have aphasia. His stroke is on the right side, so it drives his left side. But he's a land surveyor, so he uses his left side and uses video to record construction out on the roads and streets. So he does that all the time, and he needs a big computer, and he has to use his fingers all the time.
Right.
Well, he had his OT at his hospital, and he explained to him what he needed. My brother said, I need to be able to use my fingers to run this big machine that he has on his shoulder all the time. Right. So they said, oh, we have an idea. And he ran up and climbed through all the tools that they have, and they gave him this little thing. It's called a finger platter.
Interesting.
A finger platter. Everybody that's watching, you can look that up. Just finger platter. You'll see it. You can buy one on Amazon. And it looks like it's a piece of wood that has holes that you put fingers into, and you have to manipulate them, all the time. So my brother, the next day, he built one for himself, and now he uses it while even on the phone. If you're talking to him, you say, hey, what are you doing? You still have your finger print? He says, oh yeah. While he's doing this, he is doing this all the time.
Wow.
And the other day, I had another presentation, and there was an OT person making the presentation. So I asked him at the end, have you ever had or seen a finger platter? He said, nope, never heard of it. So quickly, I told him what it was. He pulled it up right in front of us and shared it. And he said, boy, I got to get one of these. I said, yes, you do. And it's like aphasia. Right. People learn what they learn based on their students and teachers and textbooks at the time. But there's so much more to know, to learn about. So you learn from, again, people like all of us, Jerry, who can continue to tell a story that helps other people learn more about it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that because I've had so many people on, and every stroke is different, as you know, and it is so amazing that when you talk, I always listen to and watch your videos about dendrites, right? Dendrites, if I'm not probably saying that right, but
dendrites.
Dendrites and how that really works. Because a lot of people, I know we've talked about it. I even talked about dendrites and how the finger, the web, and how that all happens. Can you explain that?
Well, with plasticity, because of this capacity that we all have to grow new brain matter. So you are growing dendrites and synapses. Dendrites are more of the branches of a tree, and you can actually think of this metaphorically as photosynthesis, which converts sunlight into green leaves. plasticity converts thought and cognitive activities into neuromatter, into dendrites and synapses, which are really branches and leaves.
Right.
And given that with a stroke, you have lost X number of cells, they're called neurons, they're never going to come back. They're gone. However, the remaining cells still have that capacity to grow more. So they do grow more dendrites and synapses. And as a result of that activity, now going back to how that happens, converting thought and cognitive activities into brain matter, then you are, quote, learning and growing as a result. And that is how it really does work, from someone who has lost their language and got it back, or somebody whose arm and leg didn't do well and they're doing much better now for the same set of activities.
Sure.
Similar to the activity, physical or cognitive.
Yeah. And it's funny, since it is Aphasia Awareness Month, I talk to people all the time about aphasia, and the statistics, or like 87.2% of people that don't know what aphasia is.
Yeah.
You know, the stats are just, well, I guess since I've talked to a lot of people don't know aphasia. So me trying to explain it, I mean, I can explain it very well, but still, the majority of people that don't know it is mind-boggling. So we don't get the word out enough.
That's the deal. And I've said it before. And I do like all my doctors. I like my nurses for sure. All my therapists. I've been to many, many hospitals. And I call it the interesting thing, of course, is that the practitioners know what aphasia is, but for some reason they don't use the lexicon of aphasia. So if you go to a hospital now, and I'll tell everybody that's listening, go to their local hospital's website, go to their search box and put in the word aphasia. Many times in my studies, I'll say most times, if you put in aphasia, it will come back with various responses, most of which have said, sorry, we don't know what that is. That's a hospital.
Yeah.
If you were to look, you can see that you might be lucky if they have some speech language pathologies there at the hospital, but they won't use the word aphasia. They will say somebody has trouble with their language, lost their language, difficult speaking, can't swallow. You know, they describe the symptom without telling you the name of the symptom. So unfortunately, if there's no target to aim at, then there's no target to aim at. All that you're told is you've lost your language, you're having trouble with your language, it'll come back somehow, magically. And eventually you go to rehab and they will better explain it to you. But it takes too long. It takes a long, long time. It took me years to really figure out what aphasia meant. Even though I've been told, here are some individual things you can do, they still didn't explain plasticity. Even the SLPs wouldn't necessarily explain plasticity as much as just saying, if we do these kinds of things, it may very well help you. So unfortunately, yes, hospitals themselves won't do that. If you go to the American Hospital Association, you go to their search box, if you put in stroke, you'll see 150 hits immediately. If you put in aphasia, if you're lucky, you will get one. And that is the American Hospital Association. They don't think. I have to help them understand that, because they really don't think why it's so important about aphasia.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. Looking back, I never was told I had aphasia. No one told me. Even when I left the hospital, they just didn't tell me that. Or neuroplasticity. I learned it through, like, you, other stroke survivors. I didn't know until, I just ordered all my records from, right here, all on this disc. So I just got it about a month ago, and I put it on the computer and looked, and wow, nothing with all those records, nothing said about aphasia. I couldn't believe that. So nothing. So just like you said, no one really talks about that.
Yeah, so that is what we're trying to figure out, is how we can explain to the wider public that it is important about stroke. It's very important about stroke. It's very
Yes.
important to learn about aphasia, which is about 30 to 40% of people with stroke get aphasia, acquire aphasia. But what I'm also trying to do, because maybe this will help the wider public, is the underlying capacity of plasticity is, of aphasia is plasticity. And that is how the brain learns, whether you're healthy or not. I mean, if you want to learn something new, there are certain principles of plasticity that allow you to learn. They are the same 10 principles. There are 10 principles of neuroplasticity. They work whether you want to learn something new in class or have lost your language or lost parts of your body that have to get better. You're using the same 10 principles. So maybe helping people basically help them understand how the brain really works so that they can use the skill that they always have to better use that tool, because they don't even know they have that tool.
Right.
They don't know they have that tool.
It's crazy when you think about that. I was asked yesterday or the day before, what's the hardest thing about aphasia? And I said, well, when I talk to new people that I really don't know, I get a little nervous. I mean, I never used to, because I was a speaker in my last job, and I get a little nervous, and then I kind of mumble around and fumble with my words, and then they look at me, and I think they must think I'm retarded, or then that's what, I don't know if that's kind of the common thing.
Yeah, they think you're right, have mental illness.
Yeah.
It's that's why some of the groups have put out, I have it here, to put on the dashboard of your car, so that if a police person comes, then there's a nice little card there that says, explaining what it is, so people can see it for themselves.
Yeah, because the one you sent me, I have to look somewhere around here, but I have it, and it's on my car. Aphasia.
Yeah.
So
right.
From the stroke educator, who is Dr. Tom Broussard.
Yeah. Well, I see some other questions there too. It's Yvonne talking about surprised about SLPs being informed. Yeah, all the SLPs are highly informed. I think what really is just because there's so little time that if you're lucky, you'll get a little bit of information from them. But in my case, I had what I called really good insurance. I had 30 sessions for 30 minutes each, which for me was very good, because I had my friends in stroke group that got 8 sessions or a dozen sessions. I got 30 sessions. But it's still such little time. Literally, they bring you in, they're going to go as fast as they can, still doing it appropriately slowly, because you need that too if you're talking about aphasia. And they may very well be telling you that, which they might have told me that at the beginning, but I didn't remember anything, unfortunately. So I had a hard time just understanding what was being said to me. But that's also an important component too, is to provide the patients with something physical to take with them, so they can, when they get better enough to start to understand, read, look at pictures, beginning to learn, at least you have something with you, since you'll end with your therapist without all the not the extra time. Once you're done with them, then you move to that next stage, which is lifelong learning. Everybody thinks about that as if you're just going to school. Lifelong learning from people with aphasia those are the missing words that nobody really thinks about, because you can continue to learn. You just need more tools to help you with, including physical pieces of item, including this book, right? This book.
Yes.
Because I wrote that so that people who leaves, like I left, with no understanding about aphasia,
Right.
even though an SLP had told me I had aphasia, but I didn't even remember I had met her, right? So, and then I was a month before I went to my rehab hospital, so I was a month at home. Yes, if they had given me this, my wife would have read it. I couldn't have, but there are lots and lots of pictures, so people can go, oh, that's what this is all about. I know I'm not doing it right here. So even something like this is helpful when you're leaving a hospital, even if you're not yet able to understand what has just been given to you.
Yeah, and even and I keep thinking the same thing is when I got discharged, my wife, it's like they kind of sent us out in the world, and that book would have been I have it now, but that would have been perfect to when I left the hospital to at least, why am I mumbling? Why am I saying things that don't make any sense? And she just thought this is how it's going to be, but that book would have been so perfect, but maybe like you said, I didn't remember when I was in the hospital, they said I had aphasia. I don't know if they ever said that. I just went to speech therapy.
Sure. Yeah. Awareness has its own skill too, and its own deficit. So reading, writing, and speaking are the skills that we're well aware of. Awareness has its own skill and its own deficit. So I'll say unfortunately, but based on the way the brain works or doesn't, awareness also. It's not like you, quote, forgot it as much as you are no longer aware of how to access any number of things with which your brain is still seeing things, but just can't fully understand what they are trying to express about.
Exactly. And I do see that Serena's asking about the link for the finger platter. You mentioned it. Amazon has that.
Yeah. If you just put in finger platter, then you'll see it online. You'll see what it looks like and how much it costs, a couple bucks or whatever. Get it from Amazon and other places. Yeah.
Right. And also, you guys should get on Amazon and look up stroke diaries. There's 1, 2, 3, and then ABCs of aphasia. If my computer, since it's not really working correctly, I can't put the link in there, but I have them at the top of the banner.
Oh, see them, yeah.
So
thank you.
Please order them, because I tell you, I have them all, and they're wonderful books, and it's easy to read because people, for the most part, have aphasia. They lose the ability to read right for the most part, because I get bored easy, and I don't. If it's a long something, it's a lot of work for me. No, I'm not making excuses, but that's just how it is for me. Could be different from anybody else. But your books are easy to read. That I don't want to say layman's term, but I can understand it.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm looking, and I'll respond. I'm sure Dr. Broussard will also respond to because there's a lot of questions. I didn't highlight them, but I put them on the screen. And I just let you know, I'm on my the computer that may die here very shortly, because my other one that I use all the time works perfectly. But so I apologize in advance if we just get cut off here. But yeah, there's so many comments here that we'll get through. And thank you guys for commenting as well. And nice to see you all here too. But I appreciate you being on the show, and I really do, because aphasia is so much needed out there. Shout aphasia. We need to shout out.
Yeah.
Spread the word.
I really do appreciate being on your show all the time. All the time. I saw some comments that went by. I'll talk about this just a little bit. When it comes to neurons, those are cells in the brain,
right?
And the dendrites, and then the synapses. We learn basically the neurons, when they die or when they're destroyed, when they die, they take with them the dendrites and synapses that they had built over time. The neurons go away. The scientists have been studying how they can grow new neurons, and there are some places on the brain where there might very much be evidence of new neurogenesis is what they call it, of neurons. So that's one good track they're working on. The interesting thing about all of this is that all of the learning, though, is the synaptic field. That's just the learning field. That's where everything is. And there are trillions of those, trillions of synapses. When you lose a couple 100 million cells or even 1 billion cells, they take with it the synapse and the dendrite, they go away. But how we get better is that the remaining cells have that capacity to grow more synapses, growing the learning field, right? So if when you lose your cells, I'm not going to say, what's interesting is when you lose your cells, that means you lost your synapses. The thing is that the existing cells can grow more synapses. That is where all the learning happens. It isn't that we want more cells. We don't necessarily want more cells, although they are working on it for any number of good reasons. But what we do need is to build more synapses, because that's where all the learning happens, is up there. And as a result of doing what plasticity allows you to do, you can grow one cell. If maybe yesterday it was 1,000 synapses, maybe in a year it'll be 10,000 synapses. So it's not like you can go from, from 100 to 102. You can go from 1,000 to 10,000 to even many, many more, because they have that capacity to grow more synapses. And given that I couldn't read, write, or speak well, I can only imagine that my remaining cells, given the fuel that were provided, meaning the activities themselves, they grew those additional synapses. And that's where the learning occurs.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. You study this all the time. This is your lifelong learning.
That's it.
That's terrific. And I know that, since the world, United States is kind of opening up, our stroke recovery group that I go to all the time, it's been well over a year, but they're opening this month. And I'm so looking forward to going there and speaking, which is so exciting for me to go talk to everybody in the stroke recovery group. So really, it's going to be so emotional for me just to get back in there and talk to all the new stroke patients there that think their life is over. I can't speak, and I just want to let them know, it does get better.
Yeah, my next book, by the way,
yes,
my next book is going to be called The Rosetta Stone of Aphasia Recovery.
Okay.
The Rosetta Stone of Aphasia Recovery. Now, the full title and an article I wrote recently is Persistent and Repetitive Language Activities. That is the Rosetta Stone. That is the clue to how the brain does what it does and gets better.
And where can they find that? It's not available yet.
The book isn't available yet. The article, which leads you to that, the article is on my website, and it's called the Rosetta Stone of Aphasia Recovery, Persistent and Repetitive Language Activity.
And how would they find that on StrokeEducator.com?
Oh, you go to Stroke Educator, and then go to the newsletters, and then you'll see they're all PDF there for the last several years. Yeah,
I love it, and I like what you said, Kimmy. Did you see Kimmy's comment?
No.
I am crying with excitement.
Wow,
that's great. I would say thank you, but it's Dr. Broussard. Yeah, this is wonderful.
It is. And it's wonderful because now I get to see lots of names that I now know as if they were friends, because they are friends. I mean, yes. In our world, we're all friends. There's no other way to call us friends. So I do really appreciate Kimmy and Salud and Loris, and Serena, many that I've seen over the years.
Right.
And it's more than a little interesting, because I work with the American Heart Association.
Yes.
I'm a national volunteer for American Heart Association, and I got a note. So they have a posting place where I go to get their messages and then reply. And one person had a stroke earlier this year. And of course he is saying, you know, and now of course I've lost on my therapist. What am I going to do, basically?
Right.
Because I don't know how I can get better. So I started explaining to him a little bit, gave him an article about this, the Rosetta Stone. Because as you and I both know, up to 6 months, you have no idea what's going to happen. And you imagine you're never going to get better. So you're really sort of, you know, distraught. All those people, that's a lot of people within the first 6 months, they need to hear from you.
Yes.
Jerry, Serena, everybody needs to hear from you in every possible way, building out more friends as if they were dendrites and synapses, to help build their learning field on behalf of all the people, quote, behind us. You know, we're growing up now. There's a lot of people every day, unfortunately, that have stroke and other symptoms of the symptoms that come as a result. They need to hear from us as much as possible. All of us need to do it.
Yeah, and I know, like, because there's so many people that have had strokes, and some people, Kimmy has a brain injury, but a lot of the same outcomes, the same, you know, from brain injury. It's quite the battle, but like I always say, my biggest thing is stroke is not for the weak. And I like that thing, but
you should put that somewhere as a quote somewhere. Nothing for the weak.
Yeah, I have to start doing that. Exactly. But any other things we want to cover before? I'm just looking at my you know, the computer part of this thing. But I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the people that are here watching, commenting, and all that. Just really helps out.
Yeah.
Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah. We don't have any words of wisdom. All we have is the wisdom that we all share with each other every single day.
Right.
So everybody that's responding have their wisdom for all of us to hear from as well. So I really do appreciate that. If I were to share one more thing, though, would be, of course, if you are interested, really interested, you can contact me. Most of you know who I am and have my email.
Right.
I believe it or not, I've been working on this for 9 months. I am making a presentation next Thursday night with General Michael Hayden.
Oh.
If you were to look that up and see who he is, you'll find out who he is, working for the Obama administration. He had a stroke and aphasia. Wow. And the two of us plus 2 SLPs will be on a 1-hour show called Understanding Aphasia.
Wow.
And we are trying to help the wider public understand about aphasia. But he, General Hayden, obviously he's the top of the heap so far in terms of his rank, in terms of having stroke and aphasia, but he's a very kind, nice fellow.
Right.
But if there's 1 or 2 of all of us, we need 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 100 who are interested in working hard to find their way into the press, printed press, TV, radio, Jerry's work. But again, if there's 1 Jerry, we need 1,000 Jerrys.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely.
We really do. And as Jerry said, it's not for the weak. I work hard on this, and I don't mean to do anything other than what we all do. But if you're interested, send me an email because I would, quote, sign you up. I have various committees, and I'm the vice president of the National Aphasia Association now, and we have a committee that is built for outreach. So if you're interested, especially in your states, you know, all around the country, you know, a lot on the East Coast, but further out west,
Right.
let me know, because we really need to work hard on this. And I figure, you know, this is what we need to do. As Jerry says, not for the weak.
Yeah, stroke's not for the weak, but yeah, I definitely will be signing up for that. That's and then I'll put a link in here once this is over, because that would be terrific. Or email Tom, right? They can email you.
Yeah, go right to me if you want to. And I give you examples because this is so funny, because it's so hilarious. When it comes to these metaphors, if you look out in your country, in your area, in your neighborhood, and look at their town businesses, and darn if I don't find one that is, the name of the company is called Darn Tough. Darn Tough Socks. That's
Right.
because of darning. If you look on my website, you'll see an article I wrote about darning, which is repairing a sock, right?
Right.
But if you look there, I happen to end saying aphasia is darn tough. Then I found a company who's called Darn Tough. So I sent him an email to the president and said, listen, you guys are darn tough socks. I'm talking about aphasia is darn tough. You know, you really think we ought to do an article on Aphasia Month talking about darn tough for people with aphasia, because he has a big audience base people who buy socks. And my explanation explains how the brain works to darn the brain the same way you darn socks.
Right.
Yeah. So we're working on making that happen as an example. So look around you and see who might very well have some interesting ideas about how they can approach aphasia awareness through the press, based on what would also help them, because you want to do what will help them when they try to help us, you know. So figure something out like that.
Wow.
Darn tough.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, that's terrific. Well, you guys, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And
thank you, Jerry.
Dr. Broussard, I can't say enough, because you attract all the people that want to see you, that look to learn something. Because we don't have enough of you out there to share. So,
well, we don't have enough juries either. I mean, you know, let's face it. Look, we don't have enough Salud. How many people know here about Salud and Tom?
Right.
You know, all of us. But again, we sincerely need all of the Saluds there are in the world to help be as persistent as only Salud can do, right? As in a good example. And you too, Jerry, and everybody else that we see here, and so many others. So yes, I really do appreciate everybody working hard as we continue to educate the public.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, and I appreciate you being here. And everybody, I'm sure we'll see each other out there in the chat world.
Yes, and, that's true.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Always good to see you and everybody else. Take care, everyone.
All right. Nice to see you. Take care.